January 12th, 2020, we're in Salt Fork State Park, Ohio. Hiker Nathan Gray and a friend are armed with cameras and drones to document their trek through the woods when they make a startling discovery: the rib cages of several large animals nestled amongst the foliage.
Looks like they're ripped apart pretty good.
The duo continues to explore the area when suddenly they spot this: a creature, large and humanoid, walking through the trees unbothered by or unaware of their presence. Nathan manages to get his camera even closer for a better look. Zooming in, we can see the creature appears to be covered in some type of hair or fur, with lighter, almost white hair around the top of the head.
We had no idea what it was. It was just moseying on along, like it didn't have a care in the world.
Field researcher Cliff Barrickman is not at all surprised about where this footage was filmed.
Tons of Bigfoot reports come out of this particular area. Southeastern Ohio, in the area of Salt Fork State Park, is a thick, wooded wilderness. The Appalachian Mountains are no joke, and Ohio is pushed right up against them. Anything out of Southeast Ohio should be looked at very, very closely.
However, in this particular region of the U.S., the locals don't use the name Bigfoot. They call it the Ohio Grassman, based on the large dens it supposedly makes of grass and from its diet, which reportedly consists mainly of tall grass from Ohio fields.
It's the Ohio Grassman.
One of the most infamous sightings was in 1978 when a local family claimed to be haunted by a grassman that was later nicknamed the Minerva Monster.
These people reported large, scary monsters. They would actually stalk them in their home. The family that was reporting these sightings believed that the Sasquatch killed their German Shepherd by snapping its neck. The police themselves came to the conclusion that this was in fact a credible report of something incredible happening.
That sort of violent behavior may explain the bones Nathan and his friend found in the woods. And while it doesn't explain the Grassman sightings from decades ago, Barrickman says there may be another possible explanation for what's in Nathan's video from 2020.
One other theory that's been put forth is that these animals are just normal animals that are being misidentified after the Zanesville massacre.
In 2011, an exotic animal collector released 50 animals into the Ohio woods, including Bengal tigers, lions, cougars, and even a baboon.
But one of the animals that was not killed is a baby grizzly bear. Could this animal here be a survivor of the Zanesville massacre?
The chaos in Zanesville was a catalyst for Ohio's exotic animal ownership laws that went into effect in 2014, which shut down any other potential tiger kings. So is what we're seeing in the video a grizzly, a grassman, or something else? Our experts are tracking the evidence. Wildlife biologist Stephanie Manka dismisses the idea this could be a surviving grizzly.
If this really were a grizzly bear, we would expect to have more reports, fecal samples, bear claw marks, some evidence that a bear is living in that area. And this scene looks really consistent with a human in a costume.
Let's focus on this thing's arms for a moment. Note that all apes have arms longer than their legs, enabling better quadruped movement and efficient brachiation, the ability to swing between trees. But according to anthropologist and Sasquatch expert Jeff Meldrum, we're not seeing anything like that here.
You can see the upper limb is barely to the crotch. That suggests human limb proportions. And the head is kind of large, more like a hood. It looks to me like someone in camo gear with a hoodie and insulated pants and heavy boots on.
Our verdict? It's a hoax. Though you have to give the guys credit for planting those animal bones. Nice try, fellas. It's April 2020 in Billings, Montana. Resident Sean Reagan wakes up to discover a dead deer on his property. He decides to check his home security system to see if it's caught the culprit overnight. But upon review, he instead notices something even scarier than the average wild predator. Watch the right side of the footage. Out of the darkness walks a tall white figure that resembles an upside-down V. There don't appear to be arms, a torso, or even much of a head. After a few seconds, it slinks back into the darkness.
We just freaked out the second that we saw it because it didn't look like anything you would see in the woods of the United States anywhere. It had such an inhuman quality to it.
We've enhanced the dark, grainy video as best we can, and you can see that despite its abnormal shape, the thing sure looks like it's taking deliberate steps. And Sean isn't the first person to inadvertently catch a glimpse of something shaped like that. Another video from 2007 depicting a very similar figure continues to bounce around the internet.
This video was set up by a man in Fresno, California. It's security footage, and what he captured was something incredibly bizarre. They move with this extremely strange gait. The creatures were eventually dubbed the Fresno Nightcrawlers.
The man took his footage to authorities, but they came up empty. And as the footage ascended to internet fame, reports of other encounters with so-called nightcrawlers bubbled up.
Nightcrawlers, according to people that have encountered them, are kind of phantom-like apparitions. The main characteristics being these very long, lanky legs, and really not much else in terms of a morphology or a physical body.
Any attempts to explain their origins or any connection to the dead deer on Sean's property are as ambiguous as these pieces of footage.
Some people on the internet have connected the Fresno Nightcrawlers to supposed Native American legends, that the Nightcrawlers are actually earth fairies that came down from the sky. There are also photos floating around on the internet of these wooden sculptures of creatures that look a little bit like the Fresno Nightcrawlers. However, no one really knows where those photos came from.
Wherever this creature came from, its brief presence is something Sean will not soon forget.
It starts off as disbelief and then kind of trickles into paranoia about going back out, paranoia about even staying in the area, and also paranoia of even bringing this up to other people.
Both Sean and the Fresno homeowner never spotted the nightcrawlers again, but people as far away as Poland have reported similar sightings of these eerie figures. No physical specimen has ever been found. So let's see what we can determine when our experts put their best foot forward. First, archaeologist Ed Barnhart examines the theory that these creatures could be connected to Native American folklore.
The Navajo talk about a similar phenomena called skinwalkers. They come out at night and they are evil witches who can transform into animals, but they do not look like anything that the Indians have ever talked about.
None of the known Native American folklore talks of a creature without a head or torso like these things. Barnhart's assessment is that this supposed legend is little more than internet speculation, perhaps even fabrication. So perhaps Sean's camera just caught a person who was partly obscured.
It's possible that someone just had some very brightly colored pants on and they had a dark shirt, but the legs themselves don't really look particularly human. The legs look kind of spindly, like they're just, they end in points.
West concludes Sean was likely duped by a simple prank. He shows us how he thinks it was done.
I took a pair of my pajamas and I put this little wooden armature here, which is a type of thing a puppeteer uses, and moved the armature to move the legs of the puppet. And we got something that kind of looks a little bit like a pair of pajama legs just walking along.
Notice the similarity in the motion of the alleged nightcrawler and mixed puppet, which is pulled along by a thin, taut string. And the type of camera also plays a role in the illusion.
If you've got a low-resolution security camera video, the strings really aren't very apparent. They're very easily hidden. This type of hoax is quite easy to pull off.
Our verdict, Sean was the victim of a hoax. We can't say, though, whether it was intentionally meant to scare him or was just someone playing up the online nightcrawler legend. The dead deer found on the property was likely a coincidence. As for the original Fresno nightcrawler video that set all of this off, probably a version of the same stunt. It's April 2020 in the woods near Scranton, Pennsylvania. Chase Floyd, a science teacher, is investigating mysterious howling and whooping noises that he started hearing the night before. Chase continues to record as he explores the area. He now suspects the noises he's hearing were made by a Sasquatch. Let's take a closer listen. It sounds like a strange whooping noise. As Chase seemingly moves closer to the source of the sounds, his breathing gets faster and more labored, but he forges on anyway.
Right now, I'm starting to get lightheaded. I really don't feel good right now.
And as I kept going, I started feeling nauseous. I got to a point where I was like, I just kind of want to get out of here and lay down. So I've done some research on unusual animal sounds. So a lot of like canines make weird noises, but nothing that would make the sounds that are in the video. At least not that I know of in Pennsylvania.
Once Chase shares the video, it racks up over 600,000 views. Field researcher Ken Gerhardt says the animal sounds recorded by Chase are all too familiar.
I've actually heard similar vocalizations, and these are definitely attributed to the Bigfoot phenomenon.
What's more, Gerhardt thinks Chase may be experiencing omoing, a phenomenon first described in Native American folklore dating back 2 centuries. Omoing is said to be an overwhelming energy experienced in close proximity of a Sasquatch. It manifests itself in a variety of symptoms, including temporary paralysis.
I feel good.
So omoing is described as a type of infrasound. The theory behind predators utilizing this infrasound is that it is a way to disrupt, confuse, or disorient their prey animals.
If Bigfoot actually exists, then omoing may be a predatory mechanism, or maybe it's a defense mechanism like a skunk's odor. So there are really 2 questions here, folks. First, what made these sounds? And second, is there anything to this theory of omoing? Soundscape ecologist Ben Gottesman breaks down the sound waves.
In order to find out what these alleged sounds are, let's compare them to some of the mammals in Pennsylvania.
Gottesman starts with elk, which are known to produce bugle calls like this.
It really isn't a match. The frequency range doesn't match up. The harmonic characteristics don't match up. Up next, we have coyotes. The frequency range is much higher, at around 650 hertz. That's barely at the upper range of the alleged whoop.
Gottesman is unable to make any match, but Professor of Biology Floyd Hayes says that infrasound is for real, and while humans can't hear it, they can feel it. In fact, scientists believe tigers can produce a roar under 20 hertz below the human hearing range. That has the power to stun or paralyze an animal. Also, the lower the frequency, the farther the sound can travel.
Infrasound is something that several large species of animals can produce, and some human vocalists are supposedly capable of producing infrasound.
But Hayes has a bone to pick with the idea that Chase is suffering from omoing or any sort of infrasound attack. His behavior just doesn't make sense.
He's not feeling well. He doesn't leave the area, and he doesn't go to relax somewhere. He still stays there and talks.
After further analysis, Dr. Gottesman says that the sounds recorded by Chase Floyd resemble another set of alleged Bigfoot recordings he's analyzed for us in the past.
When I was listening to the alleged sounds, I couldn't help but think back to Ron Moorhead's Sierra sounds.
He's referring to Ron Moorhead's 1970s recordings known as the Sierra sounds, which many consider genuine Bigfoot calls.
On top, we have audio from Ron Moorhead's Sierra sounds. I'm just gonna play this series of 3 whoops, and notice how the third one has a special flourish. And now, and if I ran a cross correlation on these sounds, they would be upwards of 99% similar. It's the same sound. Down to the tape recording artifacts present in the Moorhead tape. This video is a hoax.
So while we can't rule out the possibility that omoing is real and terrifying, it wasn't the cause of Mr. Floyd's symptoms. Our verdict, this is a hoax. These sounds are a copy of the alleged Bigfoot recordings made in the early 1970s. June 2020, Wolf Island, Georgia. News breaks that a man named Jeff Warren has come across something extraordinary on the beach. Fortunately, he had his phone to record it. Take a good look. The video shows what looks like an odd, washed-up carcass. There appear to be some entrails nearby as if something took a bite out of it. To the rear, there is a long tail, maybe to help propulsion in the water. On the left side, we see what appears to be a flipper, and most interesting, what looks like a long, slender neck with a small reptilian head. So what is it? Cliff Barrickman has an idea.
The shape of it suggests a plesiosaur of some sort.
A plesiosaur is an ancient reptile that lived during the time of the dinosaurs. And for field researcher Ken Gerhardt, that is particularly exciting.
In and around the town of Darien, Georgia, in the Altamaha River, there have been accounts of a mysterious monster known as the Altamaha. It's typically described as a plesiosaurian type of animal. And like this creature, it fits well into the paradigm of other lake monsters and sea serpents around the world. Similar to the Loch Ness Monster, Canada's Ogopogo, the Lake Champlain Monster in upstate New York, and so on.
The video hits the local news and soon goes viral, with many people claiming it must be the sea creature affectionately known as Alti to local Georgians. The legendary creature Altamaha is said to have a small head, a long neck and tail, and flippers. That all seems to track. Could this video be proof that the ancient legend is real? Let's check with our experts. First off, marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger says that despite its similarities to Altamaha, this creature bears resemblance to something more recognizable.
It's almost an exact replica of the cartilage of a basking shark. And these are often washed up on beaches and mistaken for sea monsters.
Growing up to 50 feet long, basking sharks are the second largest shark on Earth. When these giants decompose, they tend to first lose their lower head area, along with their dorsal and caudal fins. The result is a carcass that is easy to mistake for a plesiosaur or sea monster. However, Conger says this carcass doesn't quite add up.
If this were the cartilage structure of a basking shark, I would expect that it would be a lot rougher, it would be kind of whitish in color.
And in fact, when Dr. Conger examines the creature's state of decomposition, she doesn't see a marine animal at all. She smells a rat.
If this were an animal that was found on the beach, we would expect it to be somewhat decomposed. Instead, this animal is not decomposed at all, even though it appears to have some scratch marks around it. But there's also what appear to be entrails in front of it, and that's really not typical of the natural decomposition process. Based on the fact that it appears to be completely intact and not decomposed, I would conclude that this is a hoaxed or manufactured object.
We attempted to contact Jeff Warren, who filmed the video, but it turns out that was a made-up name, and he disappeared after sending the video to news agencies. So did the carcass. So we did some further investigating ourselves and found that this Altamaha was actually a sculpture created by an artist who goes by the name Zardulu.
Appearance becomes meaningless in our presumption of truth.
Zardulu creates anonymous viral videos. You may be familiar with her earlier masterpieces, Pizza Rat and Raccoon Riding an Alligator. So the verdict here is clear. This is an artistically created hoax. We asked Zardulu for an interview. Unsurprisingly, she declined. She did direct us to her manifesto, which declares that she creates work for the world to enjoy. I hope you enjoyed it too. It is not uncommon to find remains of deceased animals on a walk in the woods. What's weird is when those remains don't look like anything we remember from biology class. It's January 17th, 2019. Art student Kohei Katawaki says he is hiking through the dense woods near his home in Chichibu City, Japan, when he comes upon a figure that is totally alien to him. The footage and photos show what looks like the skeletal remains of some creature, but what? As we zoom in for a closer look, we can see it has strange, long, twisted talons. Its spine is severely bent with a bone structure that looks almost bird-like. But then there's the head, which is more square-shaped, which conjures the image of Hollywood extraterrestrials. And we see 2 rows of yellow humanoid-like teeth. It's no wonder Kohei was compelled to post the video online.
Obviously, one theory about this thing is that it is not of this world. There are things about it that are very E.T. by way of a giraffe. It does sort of have the head shape that a gray alien might have.
As we mentioned earlier, gray aliens are the most frequently cited extraterrestrials in reports of close encounters and abductions, such as the famous Barney and Betty Hill abduction claim from 1961. They described greys as having small, hairless humanoid bodies with large heads and black eyeballs. These remains fit that description somewhat, but there are other possibilities as well.
Maybe this creature is the result of radiation fallout. Japan was the site of 2 nuclear detonations in World War II, and more recently there was the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster, which was rated a number 7 on the International Nuclear and Radiological Event Scale, which was the same as Chernobyl.
A lot of speculation on this one. There was even buzz that it was some kind of biological experiment gone wrong. The obvious explanation is that it's a hoax, but gray alien sightings are always a hot topic. So we'll give this figure its day in court. First, we take the footage to anthropologist Kathy Strain, who has researched accounts of gray aliens. So how does this corpse compare?
When people talk about the grays, they usually bring up that there's little ones and there's big ones. And the larger ones have very long necks and they're very skinny. And this doesn't really look like that because the proportion with the long neck and the head isn't correct for it to be one of the taller grays. The legs should be much, much longer. The arms should be much longer. Everything should be scaled upward in size.
What about the nuclear radiation theory?
The chances that the skeletons are still out in the wild is unlikely.
Raccoons eat dead animals, and they are so prevalent in Japan, their overpopulation is causing a national hubbub. In the past decade, the country's raccoon population has tripled. Strange says any corpse decomposing in the woods outside Chichibu since the 2011 Fukushima disaster would have been picked apart by wildlife scavengers. And she points out something else that bothers her.
Its eye sockets are too small to actually have an exterior eyeball. You may be born without physical exterior eyes, but you would still have human-sized eye sockets below the skin.
Microphthalmia is a phenomenon in which someone's born with 1 or 2 eyes that are very small. The eye sockets on this creature are small, but they appear too tiny even for a creature with microphthalmia. Biologist Floyd Hayes is also skeptical that these remains ever belong to a living being.
There are ways in which we could change the morphology of animal, typically by giving it an extra limb or a digit or even a head. But to get something to change so dramatically, like the entire head shape, so it's sticking out on both sides or a much longer neck, that's much more difficult to do.
Hayes is left with one remaining possibility.
I believe this is a hoax.
Given that none of the theories seem to hold up, we tracked down Kohei in Japan. And when pressed, he admitted the alien corpse is a project he created for his studies at Tokyo University of the Arts.
それも、その父親の買ってきたその本っていうのもインスピレーションの一つにあると思いますし、絵本がインスピレーションのもとに結構いっぱいあるのではと思ってまして、やっぱり心のどっか 1-2% では本気で、宇宙人とかってやっぱいるんじゃないかなって信じてるんですよね。なので。
So, mystery solved. This was a clever hoax. Exciting as it may be to imagine stumbling upon an alien skeleton during a hike in the woods, this figure just doesn't cut the mustard. April 20th, 2022, Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Urban explorer Christopher Brian Hill is documenting himself navigating a sewer tunnel system deep within the forest. He records an almost 5-mile trek when he comes across this. What looks like a glowing-eyed being emerges from alongside the tunnel's edge. The being seemingly stares at the camera, then another smaller one steps further into the light, revealing its body. The beings turn and flee. Christopher advances to where they were, but they've vanished deep into the darkness. Let's take a closer look. Note that when the second creature turns to run, its foot appears to make a splash in the water.
I heard what sounded like a slapping, like smacking water. At the time, I thought it was a deer. I really didn't think much of it until I played it back when I got home, and I could see the outline.
Let's look at that being emerge from the tunnel's edge again. The reflecting light reveals its odd body shape. Field researcher Cliff Barrickman helps us understand what we just saw.
You walk into creepy places at night, you're probably gonna run into something creepy, and this fits the bill. It's long, it's lanky, the arms are touching the ground, it's got glowing eyes.
Thousands have seen this video, with many claiming it's proof of the lizard man, first sighted in the 1980s. The creature yielded a wave of newspaper, radio, and television publicity, especially in South Carolina.
The lizard man. It's often reported as being black and scaly, maybe with long claws and glowing eyes. One of the most famous sightings of this so-called lizard man came from Bishopville, South Carolina. In late June of 1988, a young man was driving home in the wee hours of the morning when he observed a 7-foot-tall scaly creature in a swamp, and it drew national attention and made it on the news with Dan Rather. This video, if authentic, shows something bipedal inside the sewers.
Barrickman suggests there may be a more pedestrian explanation.
In the 1980s in New York City, a lot of people found themselves without homes. Some of these people actually moved to the subterranean sewers and started living there. And that is where the term mole people came from. Times are tough. Maybe people are starting to take shelter underground there as well.
The mole people theory is truly heartbreaking, and the lizard man theory is truly bizarre. According to the bystander who supposedly encountered the lizard man in 1988, the creature chased him down in his car, jumped on the roof, snapped the front fender and antenna, and tore into the sides of the vehicle. Did Christopher narrowly avoid such aggression? Let's see what our experts have to say. Could the theory that these are desperate humans living in the sewers have legs? Conger says the eyes have it.
These creatures look like they have kind of a white-colored eye shine.
That white color is due to something called the tapetum lucidum, which is a biologic reflector system that is a common feature in the eyes of many nocturnal vertebrates.
The tapetum lucidum is developed as an adaptive feature for dark environments. It actually reflects light and makes the environment easier to see for that animal. Humans don't have a tapetum lucidum, so I think it's very unlikely based on this footage that we're looking at people.
So what about that lizard man theory?
Because reptiles are actually exothermic or cold-blooded, they often don't move a lot and spend a lot of time laying down on warm surfaces to regulate their body heat. They have very slow metabolisms.
Conger further notes that most reptilian creatures walk on 4 legs due to the fact that the metabolic demands of walking on 2 legs would require more energy than a cold-blooded physiology can supply. So if it isn't human and it's unlikely that it's reptilian, then what is it?
Based on everything that I'm seeing here, I think this is some sort of a hoax or CGI.
Time to take the video to forensic video expert Michael Primo to determine if this is indeed a fake.
When we adjust the intensities of these macro blocks, we can see clearly that these gradients around these pixel values have been smoothed. When we get to the point where these 2 eyes essentially travel back behind this edge, the compression changes completely. There's no smoothness to these gradients. The compression level shouldn't have changed that drastically. This video has been fabricated in some way, shape, or form.
The verdict? This is a hoax. While we didn't find anything hiding in the sewer this time, the deepest urban sewage tunnel measures 551 feet below ground level in Hong Kong. So there's still plenty of exploring to do. Pavia Iloilo, Philippines. A CCTV security camera rolls on a warm July evening in 2021. The camera captures a dimly lit street where a woman, later identified in the news as Mary Lou, sits in front of her home cleaning dishes. Unbeknownst to Mary Lou, a stranger approaches from behind. Then quickly, and as quietly as she arrives, the woman continues down the street, reaches a tree, then she seemingly folds over, dropping to the ground. The woman begins to crawl on all 4s back towards Mary Lou. Terrified, Mary Lou stands up and threatens to throw a bucket of water at her. The woman turns and runs away. Watch again. This moment, some people say she doesn't just bend over, but transforms. A week later, another alleged sighting in the same village captured on a second CCTV camera. This time, the person or creature switches between crawling and hopping. As we push in, we see a woman exiting her home, then jumping back in shock.
It doesn't look like an earthly sort of creature. The legs are bent in weird directions, and there's this long neck right there.
Field researcher Cliff Barrickman says the sightings made local news, with some believing the video captured a famed Filipino creature known as the Aswang.
One of the many stories about Aswangs is that during the day, they're just like people. They're people in your village that you may even know. But after night falls, they shapeshift. They have this proboscis tongue for lapping of blood. They go down on all fours and change their shape and turns their legs around in weird positions. Aswangs are said to be responsible for miscarriages in the community, or really anything bad, like a child dies of some disease. It's kind of the catch-all boogeyman. If you want your kids to behave, it's like, don't go out there, Aswangs are out there.
The Aswang are believed to take the forms of vampires, were-dogs, and witches. It's said they can be warded off by salt, ash, or urine, depending on whom you ask. Is this mythical creature what we're seeing here? We'll need to ask our experts. Biology professor Floyd Hayes applies what's known as kinematics to the second video, the study of animal locomotion.
This creature appears to be quite flexible in its mode of locomotion. It appears to be hopping and transitioning between being quadrupedal and bipedal, unlike what's been reported for the Aswang.
Next, he turns to the creature's anatomy.
In my opinion, the body proportions are very similar to a human. The hind limbs appear to be much longer than the forelimbs, and the feet are pointing forward.
When we line up these proportions with that of a human, that certainly looks like a match. As for the head
is rather obscure in the image, but it looks as though it actually removes a hat as it exits the video.
Anthropologist Kathy Strain believes some legends are legitimate sightings of real creatures, but she's skeptical of this particular clip.
This could be a hoax because as the creature comes to this tree, it pops up and it looks over to see if this person is coming out of their door. That is more human-like, and because they want to make sure they're seen.
If it's a fake, Strain thinks it might be serving a higher purpose.
Folklore has a place in society to teach certain skill sets or certain beliefs.
Mythology across all cultures serves to reinforce cultural norms, such as the imperative for children to stay inside at night.
They get them home on time, to be generally afraid of strangers.
And indeed, we tracked down the guy who made the second video, and he admitted he staged the stunt after being inspired by the first Mary Lou video. Not for fun, but to help with COVID quarantine compliance during the pandemic.
After I saw that video, I was thinking that it might be an inspiration for me to do the hoax. So I did the video for the community purposes, just to force the children to stay inside of their home because it was in the midst of pandemic. This is actually the mask that I wore on that time.
So that may explain the second video, but what about the first one that inspired it? Is it possible that an actual Aswang is responsible for terrifying Mary Lou in the alley?
When this lady comes back towards her and gets down on all fours, she's behaving like a typical Aswang, according to Filipino folklore. She's now gone into a different state where she's no longer human, and her trying to get closer to her without being seen indicates to me that she meant that lady harm. But you don't have a clear view of what she looked like when she was totally down on the ground. It's kind of dark, she's behind a fence. I'm willing to say that I don't really know what happened there.
So we have a split decision. We know the second clip is a hoax, but we can't say that for certain about the first. Aswangs are traditionally women, and while we don't know this woman's intent or state of mind, we do know she was crawling, and Mary Lou was genuinely frightened. We'll stay on the lookout for any future Aswang sightings. July 23rd, 2011, in a suburb just outside of Portland, Oregon, Thomas Collins hears strange noises emanating from an abandoned house on a property adjacent to his parents' home. He enlists a good friend to join him in his investigation.
This is Andrew.
When the two discover this.
There it is.
There's a high-pitched howl.
Be cautious.
My camera's having a really hard time picking this up.
Wait.
As they enter the house, they see strange graffiti scrawled on the wall.
We have to make sure there's nothing in here.
They turn off the light. But curiosity gets the best of them.
Yeah, that, I think heck is that? Shoot! Christians.
Let's see that again. Zoomed in and slowed down.
We heard a noise, and that's when we turned and were able to spotlight that creature. But it scared us so much that we just ran. I didn't feel like it wanted to hurt me, but I felt like if it wanted to, it could. And so that was enough to give me a scare.
Although Thomas says he's been back to the property to investigate during daylight hours, he's never encountered the alleged creature again. Field researcher Ken Gerhardt helps us decipher what we just saw.
So this is a video that, for obvious reasons, has gotten a lot of action online. It's very creepy, very reminiscent to a mysterious creature known as the Rake, a hairless humanoid creature standing about 6 feet tall, very cadaverous, gray, pallid skin, deep-set eyes. It's described as being very evil, terrorizing, even murdering people, particularly small children. Back in 1964, there was a gentleman who described this Rake creature as having tormented him and driven him to the point to where he actually had to take his life.
Gerhardt also theorizes that it could be a fabled hairless being from Native American tales.
In the north central United States, we have tales of the Memagweshi, humanoid types of creatures, small in stature, but with large heads, large eyes, very malevolent and evil, very dangerous to humans.
Gerhardt suggests there may be another Native American myth connected to this. Dating back thousands of years, various American Indian tribes have spoken of extraterrestrial visitors they called star people, who bear a striking resemblance to the gray aliens often described in more modern-day alien abduction claims. Since this video was recorded in the wee hours of the night, whatever we're seeing here seems to have a sixth sense for thriving in darkness. You know, nocturnal predators such as owls, cats, and rodents have developed keen hearing, smell, and dark-adapted vision in order to navigate and hunt at night. To assess the actual threat level from this nocturnal creature, we turn to our experts. Professor of Anatomy and Anthropology, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, weighs in on the Managishi claims.
I think that the most telling disqualification is the size. I mean, these are described consistently as little people. And my experience with indigenous populations here, that can be anything from 5 inches tall to 3 feet tall. But my impression was of a more human size being depicted in the video rather than a very small creature.
Anthropologist Kathy Strain has some insights into the Greys theory.
When people talk about the Greys, they usually bring up that there's little ones and there's big ones. And the larger ones have these very long necks and these big, large eyes. And this doesn't really look like that because their eyes are much smaller.
So if it isn't the Managishi or Greys, could it be the fearsome Rake? Meldrum sees some red flags.
One thing that struck me about this video was the very orchestrated feel. I've never heard anyone say, "Be cautious."
Be cautious.
Which seemed extremely contrived. And the only characteristics that really are discernible are that it has a pale, high forehead and rounded skull. That could be a mask. And given the popularity of the Rake image, there's no shortage of Rake masks online.
Next, we bring in forensic video expert Michael Primo to analyze if this video could, in fact, be an elaborate hoax.
This doesn't appear to be anything that was essentially CGI'd or manufactured. The physical aspects of the scene kind of confirm that this appears to be something within this scene, but whether or not it's a paranormal creature, determinations about that simply can't be made from a forensic perspective.
But Primo isn't satisfied, and it doesn't take him long to find more corroborative evidence online.
Upon further investigating, I found evidence that supported that this particular person that created this video had some sort of IMDb profile, specifically in the genre of science fiction. It appears that this person does this professionally in some capacity to create videos like this. It's pretty clear cut here that these videos have been post-produced and they are fake.
Shoot! Our verdict? We're calling it a hoax. The scripted feel of the video and the human-like size of the creature are the main giveaways. Though Thomas still swears the encounter was real, we can clearly say this isn't a rake. But abandoned sites still remain a hotbed of supernatural activity. So rest assured, we will continue to explore them.